Hello, everyone. We are here today with Jennie and Laurie to do another astrobiography. So today's person in the spotlight is Angela Davis, and I'm going to turn this over to Jennie and let her tell us a little bit about Angela Davis.
Yeah, so Angela Davis is quite an incredible person, and she also is the owner of an incredible astrology chart. So
Oof.
this is a great opportunity. Angela Davis is just a super brilliant woman who was acquitted in 1972 of charges that were made against her that were false. And she essentially embodied everything that the American government was afraid of. She was black, she was female, she was intelligent, she was articulate, and she also was a member of the Communist Party, which we'll talk a bit more about in the as we break down the chart a bit more. But Lori, what else do you want to say about this incredible woman?
Oh, she really is quite incredible, and her story is quite incredible. And just the whole idea of her being the embodiment of everything that our government in the late 60s and early 70s really feared. And when she was put on the top 10 of the FBI's most wanted list, that just, it was a game changer, because once a person was on that list, they were considered, all effort was going to go into bringing that person down.
Yeah,
And yeah, she was put on that list because the government was terrified of her. And it's an interesting to look at it now. It is really a timely topic to think back to what was going on in those years. And the documentary that I would encourage all of you to watch is called Free Angela and All Political Prisoners. I think that was on Amazon. I think it was on Amazon Prime. I think I had to pay $3.99 to rent it through Amazon Prime, but it's really worth watching. It's powerful. Some of you won't remember any of what happened with Angela Davis back then in 1972. Those of you who are my age and older will remember it from varying perspectives. And I realize how watching this video, how powerfully it pointed out my own perspective then and my perspective now. And it's a fascinating way to explore this woman's chart. And if you are, of my age or older, it's also a really powerful way to explore your own understanding of the world around you.
oh, that's great, Lori. Yeah,
Yeah.
great to hear a little bit more of your personal take on it. Yeah, because I was not born when this happened, but I think this is a very appropriate time to be talking about her because there's a lot going on with racism right now and the need to be anti-racist and what that really means, and it's being talked about more in our educational system. And this is we're in a moment for sure. I mean, with everything that happened in 2020, just I mean civil unrest really bringing these issues to light, so this is just a really timely moment to talk about her. um, yeah, and I mean she was pretty unique. I was just going to say a couple more words about more her past. Like she was born in the South, but her family moved away from Alabama when she was still younger. So she wasn't really part of that what was happening in the civil rights movement in the South at that time. But she did study. She went to university at Brandeis, super bright, as we've mentioned, and then went off to Germany and really learned a lot about German philosophy and really was a great believer in the importance of knowledge. And she
Yeah.
really was a pursuer of knowledge. Later, and then came back to California because she wanted to be part of what was going on at the times and ended up being a professor at UCLA.
Right.
And there's a little bit of history there where they basically fired her because they did not like her being part of the Communist Party.
Right.
Um, but her students thought she was incredible, and she was a very provocative teacher. So, yeah.
I love that part in the documentary where they interviewed some of her students and just how impressed people were with her level of brilliance and her level of her ability to articulate her
Yeah,
understanding of these deep philosophical ideas. And she
Yeah.
was an extraordinary woman.
Yeah, she is really unique. And if you watch the documentary, I think you'll be impressed with just the sheer presence that she brings, and that and fortunately, we're lucky enough that she's still with us, which I think is kind of amazing because she's been through so much. But she's just still incredible woman. So, what do you say we look at the chart? What do you think?
Let's pull up her chart.
Such a cool
She's
chart.
an amazing chart.
Okay, I'm just gonna scoot us over to the middle here. All right. Well, here we have Angela Davis, born in 1944, an Aquarius.
Aquarius sun, Aquarius moon. And really, I just want to say one more time, I want to really encourage you to watch that documentary with this chart in your hand. The information is here. I can't attach the chart to this video on YouTube, but you can get a copy of this chart and print it out. She was born on January 26, 1944, 12:30 p.m. in Birmingham, Alabama. Get this chart and watch this documentary. It will teach you a lot, and it'll teach you a lot about yourself if you were alive during that time as well.
Yeah. It's I mean, I think you want to just start with the sun and moon there, Lori. We've already mentioned Aquarius.
Sure. Let's just look. Yeah. I mean, you look at this chart and the first thing that kind of jumps out at you is that sun and moon right at the top of the chart in Aquarius. Now, what is the main thing that you think of when you think of Aquarius, Jenny?
Oh, it's just totally out of the box. It's like, being unusual, socially significant, or Noel Till keywords. But it carries the archetype of the truth sayer. It carries the archetype of the exile. And also, I mean, there's quite a few other ones there: the scientist, the reformer. And it really, when you see moon in Aquarius, it's really a signification of some sort of brilliance. So that's what I think of right away.
Yeah, and the revolutionary also is another archetype for Aquarius. And yeah, I often think just about the intellectual brilliance, the ability of Aquarius energy to move outside of what it's been taught, what other people think, just that untethered brilliance that can go beyond what's expected of it. And I want to go right from that because we can't look at Angela Davis's life or her chart without continually coming back to this piece about brilliance and the ability to articulate that brilliance. So of course that's going to bring our attention to Mercury, right, Jenny?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mercury, it's, so Mercury's in a different sign, in Capricorn there. So that just brings in a different sort of set of things. And Capricorn brings in things like integrity, groundedness, this ability to kind of scale the cliffs. It's symbolized by the goat. So it's this idea of being able to climb up mountains. And her Mercury doesn't have any aspects to it, Ptolemaic aspects. And what this tells us is that it gives us this kind of wild child aspect to it, where it kind of takes the chart and it leads it in a certain way. So it sort of frees it up to behave in any way that it wants to. And in this case, the ninth house of disseminating information.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so the Mercury is how her, we've identified with the Aquarius, just the brilliance and the unusualness of who she is, what her emotional nature is. And then the Mercury, the thought processes of Mercury take that and exactly, go into the place of integrity and the seriousness. I mean, how she uses her mind is serious business. And yet the fact that it makes no aspects, I mean, it makes a trine aspect to the ascendant, but it makes no aspects to other planets. And one way Noel Till talks about an unaspected planet is that it runs away with the chart. It
Yeah.
becomes the most important piece. And it's, yeah. So again, there's not only that brilliance with all that Aquarius, but the seriousness with which she takes her thinking and how it kind of takes over a lot of other things in the chart.
Yeah.
And the fact that with the trine aspect to the ascendant, the ability to articulate that right through her personality.
Yeah. And I think about a lot about, so with the Aquarius, I think of that being sort of up on high. It's like way up there in the stratosphere with this incredible view of everything. And but it's also a bit separate. It has the ability to really rise above the kind of I don't know, maybe the issues with emotions, or those kinds of things. Like, it kind of just rises above that and has this overarching view. And then having Mercury and Capricorn just like brings all that right down to earth. And then, like you said, the trine to the ascendant allows her to really deliver that message in this incredibly I don't know, professional, steady, with the ability to move mountains, like in through her communication.
And from my perspective as a young teenager or a young person, when all of this was going on with Angela Davis, how the US government presented her was she was just this horrible radical person. Nobody, it was not, I don't know exactly how to say this, but yeah, we as people living outside of what was going on this political level, we didn't see that articulation.
No, it wasn't shown, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she was just this horrible radical person, and in reality, you listen to her speak, my goodness, how could you have just discounted her
Mm.
as just a criminal element when she clearly was just so brilliant and articulate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so brave to really take on that court case the way that she did. And I want to say one thing about that court case, which is that part of the reason, part of the way that she won that case and was acquitted, is that she delivered the final statement to the jurors. So basically, the defense team were like, let's let her speak for herself, because the jurors will see for themselves how articulate and intelligent this person is. And I am sure that is part of why she won the case.
Yeah,
So it's a
absolutely.
rare thing to happen, to have the person being defended to speak up like that at the end as the closing statement.
Yeah. And you talk about the bravery, and
Mm.
my mind just immediately goes to this in Gemini, her Mars and her Uranus, and in Gemini. So we've got more intellect, more bravery and directness and unusual. I mean, this just, it just says the same thing over and over. You keep looking at this chart and it just says the same thing over and over again. And I want to just mark out here this amazing grand trine.
Yeah. Yeah. I want, so one thing you'll notice, again, as Laurie mentioned, the Uranus and Mars and Gemini, so that takes that's in Mercury sign. So that's the way that that's enhanced. It's just, it gives you that connection to Mercury. But then a grand trine is is quite a force to be reckoned with in a certain way. I mean, you can just look at that structure in a chart and you can just see, okay, this is a stable structure, right?
Right.
What are some of the things you like to bring in about grand trines, Laurie?
I love seeing a grand trine in a chart. I just love it because it's such a dynamic element. It's such a sign of self-sufficiency and just let's see. There's a tricky part of a grand trine because it's so self-sufficient, and with her it's all in air sign, so it really brings in this idea of, yes, she's the one to speak at her court situation because she's got a handle on the intellect way more than any of her lawyers could. On that level of intellect, she's totally self-sufficient and she can just function on her own that way. It kind of it does speak more, even more to the idea of separateness, though.
Yeah.
You know, the exile idea of
Yeah.
Aquarius. And this kind of accentuates it. And it makes you wonder on some level, you know, one of the things in when I see a grand trine is that it can work against intimate relationships because from other people's perspective, oh, Angela Davis, she doesn't need us. She's got everything she needs right there. That's
Mhm.
kind of the perception with a grand trine. And it can result in a person who's kind of lonely because other people just don't feel needed.
Mhm.
And intellectually, she didn't even need those lawyers, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she does. But one of the things that kind of even accentuates that exile kind of statement for her, I think, is that if you look at the element and modality balance in this
Mhm.
chart, she has no water whatsoever.
Yeah.
She has no planets in water signs. So she's all intellect. She's all air and fire.
Mhm.
And is that right? I think it's fire is
Yeah.
um
There's two.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's all air and fire, mostly air.
Yeah.
She's got the tiniest, well, her Mercury is in Capricorn. So she's got Earth on that level that is kind of in service to all this wild thinking.
Yeah.
So that does bring that practicality in. But
Mhm.
on an emotional level, she can really keep herself quite separate.
Yeah. I just think of, and she withstood being in prison for a year waiting for this trial. And I think of that. I feel like this trine really helps. That's a symbol of how she withstood that. Like, first of all, that she's motivated by the spreading of ideas, that's a key thing with all that air. And second of all, that she can just kind of have this like space between the brutality really of being in a prison for that long and like everything that was entailed with that, that she just was able to kind of stay like, okay, I'm to stay sort of intact,
Yeah.
you know?
And
Um,
I think she was probably really able to even further deepen her intellectual understanding of her situation in
yeah.
the context of where she found herself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Yeah. That she was absorbing information from her experience by learning from it and further enhancing her viewpoint around the oppression of Black people in this country. Um, and then Lori's pointing out so this trine, one of the things about trines is it is a stable configuration of energy. And one thing you want to look for in a trine is there a way that it's broken up? Is there a break in that? Kind of that that
An
energy
outlet. I
flow.
think of it as an outlet.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
needs, you know, yeah, a grand trine is much more workable if there's an outlet.
Yeah.
But
And
what is this outlet?
well, it's Pluto. So this is the whole power structure. This is this empowerment of her way of kind of, in a sense, delivering the message that's in that trine is through this empowerment. She's empowered to speak, and this is what she does. And then Pluto also makes sextiles to the other parts of the
Oh,
trine.
that's right.
So so this is a kite formation. This is what a kite is. It's a grand trine with an opposition to one of the planets. And the opposition is the place where all that energy can be released through. So, wow. I mean, that is such a statement. That is such a statement of her power.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah. It's so interesting because she started out looking at this right now makes me want to go and do some exploration of what exactly she's doing right now.
Mm.
Because, you know, this was her youth, this being this revolutionary, you know, not that that was what she started out trying to do, but she was just sort of put in that position. And that was really, you know, there was a development and stabilization of her as the revolutionary, that the energy she came into this life with the South Node there, and the purpose over the course of the life pulling her down toward that deep intensity at the core base of the chart, the
Mm.
the North Node. Do you remember, what is she doing now?
Well, I was going to point out, well, this documentary came out recently. So this is another way of bringing her work back into the
Oh,
spotlight.
yeah,
And, right, and Uranus is
yeah,
squaring that Pluto, or just was.
yes.
Um, and well, squaring that axis, right? The Sun Pluto axis. So that kind of, um, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know as much. I mean, I feel like this is a woman who has stayed busy, who has stayed
Right,
active very much. And,
right.
we're focusing on the most prominent chapter for life, but certainly she doesn't stop. The chart doesn't stop. This
I mean,
empowerment.
she's continued to write and teach and all of that from what she learned in that youthful stage.
Mm.
Yeah, her real power is probably happening now. And it's happening, yes, through this documentary, through I mean, one thing we know she's doing right now is she's doing interviews.
Mhm.
She's
Yeah,
helping create documentaries.
yeah,
She's using that, what is really has been built over the course of her lifetime at the core of her. It would be really interesting to kind of dig more into what the work she is doing right now. And yeah, I know that watching that documentary, her voice is very clear now.
mm,
Very
yes,
clear now.
yeah.
It's
And
really interesting.
the other thing I just wanted to mention about that Pluto, so not so much in the now context, but just in general, is that this is what her hemisphere emphasis when you use retrogrades is southern. So that means that this is a person whose most of her work is out in the world, and that she has to figure out how to buffet, deal with the buffeting of the outside world. And the way that you look at that in a remedial sense is you would look down at what she has to do at the root of her chart. And that's kind of what this picture shows. And you can just see that. I mean, you can see the triangle, and then you can see that the root of the triangle, just like the root of a big tree, is down at the bottom. So she had to do the necessary work around stabilizing her own root to empower herself to actualize the potential in her chart. And this is just something that we kind of think about in astrology. I wanted to point out. So,
And it's seen in many different ways. It's seen
mhm.
in that outlet from the trine. It's seen in that remedial idea of the the hemispheres, and it's seen in the North Node. So there you've got your 3 times. I remember early on in my studies of astrology, reading that if you don't see something repeated 3 times, then it's not worth paying attention to. So
Yeah.
I always keep that idea in my head, and there it is, real easy to see that as this is really the direction of her life, and how she um, yeah, how she does her best work is reaching into that core,
Mm,
that deep core.
hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. I mean, obviously we could go on and on about this chart, but I think something probably we need to mention is just the simple fact that the midheaven is in Capricorn. Because since we're looking at a person who we want to look at her vocation and what what she shows up as. And so the midheaven's at Capricorn, and Mercury being that we've already discussed. And that just brings in the fact that Saturn is the ruler of that. So that's serious, hardworking, um, taskmaster of Saturn. So that also just makes her effective. I mean, Capricorn is a very effective sign. It's really can do the
Yeah,
administration.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, and a really nice trine to the moon. So that
And
was
it
also
finds
good.
that moon. And I want to say one other thing before I forget, is just with all of that Aquarius and all of this intellect, and the title of the movie, Free Angela and All Political Prisoners. When she was acquitted of her crime, she did not come out of that courtroom with the attitude of, oh, I've won, I've won. I mean, it was very much the people's victory. I mean, she talked about that over and over. This is a victory for the people, and the whole statement, power to the people. I mean, it was all about freeing the people, not
Yeah,
herself. Her whole focus is so much beyond her own personal interests.
yeah,
It's
and
fascinating.
I think that's where, and that is where her belonging to the Communist Party, that's where it came from, was that need for the collective, was that
Right.
need for to really bring that in. So I thought that was, I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It just makes sense that that's what she was pursuing. So
Yeah. That was it. The Communist Party provided that collective that she was looking for at that time. It
mhm,
wasn't because she was trying to overthrow the government,
yeah.
although the government back in that time and how it was dealing with these racial and humanitarian issues, the more we dig into them, the more we see
And
what was really going on.
yeah, and it explains like what we've, what's where the government is now, and like where we've been for the last 4 years, and what's happening right now. And this enormous amount of work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So this is highlighting that. So yeah,
Yeah, and so much, we can do so much of our own personal internal work by understanding history and looking at these charts and really trying to grapple with an understanding of what those lives were really about is is so illuminating. I mean, yeah, it's so illuminating. Personally, this one has been very enlightening to me. So I'm really grateful, Jenny, that you're willing to do these videos with me. And I find it so exciting and so fun.
yeah, absolutely, I agree, and it feels really good to be doing this work and highlighting various people that need to be highlighted. And I do think it is a personal journey for all of us. We all have work to do. We all need to unpack our own perspectives and perhaps our own prejudices and that kind of thing. And that's one of the beauties of astrology, though, is it can help you. It really is about perspective. It can just give you a little bit of a shift in perspective that can help you understand things, and rather than react to things immediately, just to understand things better. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jenny. And I'm excited already thinking about who we'll pick next.
Yes, thanks, Lori.
All right. You have a great day. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Bye.